Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. And it's a great pleasure to welcome back to the CGHE webinar series, Marek, Kwiek, who's been such an important presenter in our series, opening up the global higher education, science and knowledge landscape for us. And I'll introduce Marek properly in a moment. Let me go through the webinar protocols first. Remember that we're being recorded, and the webinar will be posted on our website, and that takes you to our YouTube channel, where more people are watching our webinars through YouTube than live. A transcript of the chat function will also be posted on our website. So what you say in the public chat function is similarly on record. Now, please keep yourself muted during the webinar unless you've been asked to speak during the Q&A section. There's no need to have your video on either during the webinar, but we recommend, of course, that you turn on both video and audio when you come into the discussion. We recommend using speaker view in the top right-hand corner there so you can more clearly see who is talking. Now, to ask a question or to make a statement in response to the presentation by Marek, use the chat function. Post your question or your statement there, and on the basis of what's coming into the chat, I will select people into the conversation that in the Q&A section, which is such an important part of our webinars. I will notify you if and when we're going to bring you into the discussion. If you've come in relatively early with your statement or question, then you're likely to end up in the discussion. If you come in 5 or 10 minutes before the end, you may miss out. So be warned, come in early. When you're invited in, I'll invite you in on camera. Please unmute yourself, switch on your video, and state your name and where you are from, and then proceed with your question or statement. It's a pleasure to again introduce Marek Kwiek. He's chairholder of the UNESCO Chair in Institutional Research and Higher Education Policy, Director of the Institute for Advanced Studies in Social Sciences and Humanities at the University of Poznan, Poland. His research areas are global academic profession and quantitative science studies, and he focuses on research collaboration and social stratification in science. He's a frequent academic author, prolific and much cited, much used, and he publishes in the principal higher education journals and Scimetrics, Journal of Infometrics, Journal of Economic Surveys, I noticed too, Marek. And he also publishes monographs as well as journal papers. His presentation will bear repeated viewing, but don't forget to take the opportunity to enter into discussion with him now while you have him with you. Marek, a pleasure to hand over to you at this point.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's a great pleasure to be back again. I'm delighted to be in this wonderful place among you. Okay, let me start. Let me start by this. I've been involved in academic profession studies for 2 decades, and in the past decade, pretty intensively. I spent a decade doing global surveys and international academic professional surveys, and I'm moving to a different terrain. I wanted to share some insights with you right now. So academic profession studies going global, or global academic professional studies, what we gain, what we lose, and big data. Next slide, please. Okay, major questions I will be asking. How to explore the academic profession from a global perspective? How to collect and analyze the data? What is the future of academic profession studies in the digital age? What new opportunities we have? Okay, we know we have huge numbers of observations in big data. We know it, but is there a cost to it? Do we lose something? What do we lose? And finally, advantages and limitations. As I said, I spent a decade on doing academic surveys. So I know the advantages and I know limitations. Survey data versus bibliometric or even biobibliometric data and the methods. Next slide, please. Major topics. Trade-offs in data collection and analysis, academic surveys versus big data analysis. There are trade-offs I want to discuss. Cloud computing and the power of raw publication citation metadata, not aggregated data, but raw data. Then data sets and availability and dataset mergers, which I've been involved in. And finally, very briefly, two short examples of ongoing global studies I'm doing right now with my teams. First is quantifying the grain of the academic profession, or the grain professoriate. And the second is the upper 10,000 in terms of impact, or the global impact elites, or highly cited researchers, their demographics, their gender, and their collaboration patterns. As I said, it's ongoing research. It's 1 to 2 years, still ongoing, but there's a long learning curve in this case. That's why it takes longer. And finally, implications. Okay, next slide, please. Well, connection, academic profession studies and big data. What the connections are. The digital age offers new opportunities, and we want to use these opportunities in academic profession studies. But big data are not created for us. They are created by companies or by governments for purposes other than research, and that's important. We don't create them, and it's sometimes difficult for us to use them. So what is needed is repurposing, because originally the users are not us. Also, big data are difficult for us to access. We either don't have access at all, or it takes months or years to get access, or we have to pay a lot of money to get access. So generally, big data are not easily accessible unless they are unstructured, like Twitter data or Google Scholar data. If they are structured, like the data I'll be talking about today, like Scopus data, they are either inaccessible or not for free. Then big data help us in asking new, interesting, and important research questions. And I'll be saying today, they enable doing empirically driven theorizing for us. That's important. So big data accumulate facts, accumulate patterns, puzzles, and we are able to build new theories if we want. Next slide, please. Big data provide us with a different scale and scope of research, but expectations are high. We have opportunities, but also we have high expectations. Big data refer also to data sets, and I'm using this definition of big data, which refers to data sets, which are large in both size and complexity. And this is what Scopus raw data or Web of Science core collection raw data represent. I'll be talking about structured data, which are preferred because they are easier to use. However, working with huge amounts of data to discover patterns is difficult, but they allow to see what is normally imperceptible. For instance, see the outliers, or see the upper 1% or the upper 0.1%, what is normally imperceptible. At the same time, big data increases our insight into the social generally. I strongly believe big data also increase our insight into the academic profession. And that's the story I'll be presenting today, academic profession and new opportunities. However, and this is however important, however, complex procedures are needed, team research is needed, new skills, competencies are needed. I would say a working knowledge of data structures, coding, advanced statistics, visualizations, all this is needed. It immediately means that for most of us, we have to be working in teams. You can't do it on your own unless you are a data scientist or computational social scientists, but then you don't have this academic profession studies background and higher education research background. So it's enormously rare. Normally in this area, which I'll be promoting here somehow, team research is needed. Okay, next slide, please. Why now? Why not a decade ago? I would say there's one most important factor. It's availability of digital data. We can know a lot about inputs and outputs in research. We can know a lot about funding or productivity or collaboration or mobility by gender, by passage of time, by country, by discipline, etc., etc. So it's availability. We have the data, we move on. A decade ago, when I started to do academic profession studies intensively in the EuroISA CAP survey, global survey of academics, it was just unthinkable. But at the same time, we have new data, we have computer powered at our fingertips, but at the same time, we have competitors, and they are termed here, well, the science of science or research on research or studies of science and technology, etc. We have competitors who study academic careers as we have been studying for 5 to 7 decades. Guys from the outside to us study academic careers, and interestingly, they are enormously powerful and successful. They publish in top journals globally like Science, Nature, or PNAS. They do a lot of interesting stuff, which we don't do. So I will be saying that we face an existential challenge, and we have to be thinking how to survive the next decade, provided that all around use the data we should be using, because they refer directly to academic careers and directly to academic profession. We are beginning to use it, but not as much as those from the areas of science or quantitative science studies. So these will be competitors, and competition will be an important word for me today. And next slide, please. The global academic profession and its digital traces. Academics leave traces in their printed publications. That's a major point. So we can examine biographical, administrative, publishing, citation, data, merge the data sets and work on them. We can trace academic profession over time, or we can use temporal, topical, geographical, and network analysis. You may be hearing planes over Poznan, which is part of the story which I don't even want to tell you about today. This is like the war, but it's not the war here, but you can hear the planes. I'm sorry. So we can trace the academic profession over the years, across countries, across institutions, cities. We can discuss individual scientists or their teams. We finally have access to scientists as men and women, which is incredible. We don't have scientists, we have men scientists and women scientists. We have juniors and seniors, we have disciplines, everything with some limitations available through digital traces. We can measure the profession with ever more precision. Obviously, many of us will say, okay, measuring is not everything. We want ideas. We don't want to measure, because we measure what we can. We want something else. I agree. I believe in the power of ideas. I believe also in the power of data. And in combination, I believe in the power of data-supported ideas. That's why I'm trying to use new sources. Next slide, please. Okay, what is the impact of globalization in terms of new data sources? There is a pressure on us also to use much larger data sets, larger numbers of observations to draw valid conclusions. 100, 1,000 perhaps is not enough. And perhaps it's 5,000 or 10,000 or 100,000, 1 million. We see it around, we see it in science, in nature, and we think maybe they are right. Maybe it's not about being statistically significant. It's about being relevant, but also about being attractive or convincing. We need to be convincing in our scholar results, which requires, in my view, larger data sets and larger numbers of observations. There is a pressure to quantify more intensively academic careers because others do it. because others work with hundreds of thousands or millions of observations. We know what you observe it. So my intuition is 1,000 to 1,200 observations per country today is not enough. I was working in accuracy projects for many, many years, and what was fantastic 15 years ago, 10 years ago, today might not be as convincing or as attractive as it should be. Next slide, please. Big data are already used by our competitors for scholarly and policy attention. We see it. We see the citations, we see the names, we see the documents, papers, we read them, so we know what's going on. Digital data can be explored today at a scale unimaginable a decade ago. It's unimaginable. So we have new competition, and it comes from the students of science and students of scientists. We are becoming one among many. We have to fight. So the word is competition, and the competition is about where the data, interpretation, and knowledge will come in the next decade. Will it come from us, which is the education sector or higher education sector, or will it come from others, like data science or computational social scientists? I strongly believe will be still attractive, and the interpretation will come from us. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, the idea, as you can see on the right, to move from publications to scholars as a unit of analysis. We have millions of publications who have authors. Authors have gender, and authors have affiliations, and authors have seniority, etc., etc. We have to move, or some of us might want to move, like myself, from publications to scholars. Next slide, please. Well, we know the limitations of survey instruments. When you have small number of observations, we have limited policy implications. And we have small number of observations by discipline, or by employment type, or by age, by seniority, by collaboration type, by gender. This is in general, 1,200 observations per country is fantastic. But when you divide it by disciplines or age or collaboration or whatever, the numbers are very, very low. Next slide, please. So I'm using ever larger samples in my research. I started with, well, CAP-EURAC project, which was 4,000 returned questionnaires. Then I moved to 100,000 scientists and scholars in this laboratory data set. And then I moved to, or we moved, our team moved to global datasets and surveys with about 5 million scientists, publishing scientists in the past 3 decades. On the right, you see just a figure how our second dataset was produced using probabilistic and deterministic record linkage, and we keep using even now, even though we moved to global studies. Next slide, please. Okay, just one short mention. We realized that science consists of men and women. So in the past year or two, me and my postdoc, Dr. Wojciech Roszka, we published a number of papers about collaboration between men and women, between collaboration international, national, and on the right you can see no collaboration or publishing solo, published a week ago. So we started individual publication portfolios for those 25,000 Polish scientists and scholars with doctorates. And this is just a snapshot of what was done in, well, last year, say. And next slide, please. Limits. You see the impossible sign on the right. And it's somehow true. I had these issues myself working on survey data. Suppose we want to compare highly productive, the upper 10%, male and female, young under 40, and working in STEM disciplines, and working additionally in research-intensive universities. It's almost impossible when you work with surveys. Your sample goes down from 1,000 to a few dozens of academics. If you don't show it, it's okay, but if you show it, it's not attractive because you're working with very small numbers. Suppose also another example, you don't want a snapshot like 1 year, but you want to focus on change over time. 1 or 2 decades, and it's impossible. You want to focus on countries across Europe. You can't do this because you have only a couple of countries. You want to focus on 38 OECD economies. You can't do this because you don't have survey data. You want to study disciplines, etc., decades. You can't do this. Impossible. And now you see my point. Data-informed academic profession studies look powerless. This is what I experienced in the past few years. I was powerless. I wanted to do a lot of research, especially on top performers and internationalists, and my observations were very, very limited. That's why I'm suggesting new methods to explore. Next slide, please. What we have in surveys, we have snapshots, 1 point in time, 1 year. We have points in the world, 1 country or 20 countries. We have very limited or just limited number of survey questions because we value respondents' time. And we also have low response rate. And we use all good survey methods. And my answer is yes, rightly so. We have to be doing this because this knowledge will come only from surveys. We can collect this type of knowledge, I will discuss it in a second, only for surveys. So next slide, please. You will see what you can explore only for surveys. And it's fantastic to see what we are doing and what we will be doing. Think of behaviors, attitudes, perceptions, expectations, opinions, what we can do in surveys. Let's suppose teaching and research time distribution, or rate your salary, please, or were you considering changing your job, or what are your working conditions from 1 to 10, or from 1 to 7? What about academic freedom? Or to quote from Altbach, which is used again and again, quote, if I had it to do over again, I wouldn't become an academic. Or again from Altbach, I frequently feel under pressure to do more research than I actually would like to do. Perfect. Over 3 decades, we are asking these questions. Think about marriage or parental leaves, about language. You can't do this through big data. Next slide, please. But what we can explore through big data, it's a different story. Think of research productivity by publication type, detailed. Think of collaboration and its major types, not only international and national, but also same-sex collaboration, which I studied, or mixed-sex collaboration, which I studied, or solo research, or team size. Think of citations representing scholarly impact. Think of mobility, short-term, long-term. Think of research funding. Think of credits or authorships. All these can be studied using big data and basically cannot be studied through surveys on a global scale. It might be done on a per country basis, but not really on a global scale. And add to this, all those dimensions which I raised above, add to this gender, everything by gender, or everything by age and seniority. I would say these opportunities are enormous. And add to this also statistical approach, 1 year, or decades, like 1 to 2 decades. The possibilities are enormous. There are limitations, but still we need to know what's possible. And next slide, please. We have competitors. We remember, know your competitors. I put it here. There are large-scale studies of academic careers based on bibliometric data, and they challenge the status of our research in several terms. Scholarly terms, because these papers and books get read and get cited, but also in policy terms. These people and these papers and books attract attention. So what is the competition about? What is read and cited? What is valued in scholarly terms? What is publicly fundable? And finally, perhaps most importantly, where top young minds go to do research? Will they go to higher education departments or education departments in the future, or will they go to data science departments and related? I'd like top minds to go to us too, as they did in the past. Next slide, please. Two examples very briefly. quantifying the grain of academic profession. We've been discussing the grain professoriate for decades. It's an old question. Are we, well, aging, and to what extent we are aging? There are alarmistic studies. They are linking lowering productivity to aging professoriate, etc., etc. And there's one assumption: the academic profession is getting older. Is it, was my question, is it globally true? We have some limited data from a few national level studies, but they are not exhaustive. So I was studying, or we were studying, the changes in the median age, the age distribution, and numbers of academics over time globally, or in 38 countries, I would say in the OECD area, in 24 disciplines, with the help, and I have to thank enormously, ICSR, International Center for the Study of Research. We have agreement with Elsevier, and they provide us with some data, and they do calculations for us on big, fast computers. Next slide, please. So quantifying the grain of the academic profession. Which variables do I have? Well, I have academic age, or the date of first academic publication of every person, academic age, in Scopus dataset, raw data. I have the first and the last publication date, importantly, referring also to different document types. I have country of affiliation or countries of affiliation over a lifetime. Every person has a discipline. I'm using lifetime publications, every publication, and then every reference. And then I take the mode of all reference, or of all references and all publications. And I'm saying, okay, this guy is from political sciences. And if the majority of his or her references come from political sciences, no matter what he or she's doing, I'm saying you belong to political sciences, lifetime publications. And finally, I have gender, which 10 years ago, 5 years ago, was just impossible. Inferred gender, males and female scientists, not just scientists. Okay, next slide, please. There's a number of steps which we are using here in Poznan. We have all publications, we have all dates of first publication for everyone. We have gender, we have age, we have all disciplines, and then we filter by 3 decades, which I'm studying, and by 38 countries, OECD countries. And we go down and down and down and down to about 5 million scientists and scholars. You see all the steps. And next line, please. And what we received very briefly. Okay, the question was the grain of the academic profession. Are we graying globally in the OECD? Yes, we are. Because as you can see on the left top figure, the median age in all disciplines is increasing. And if you look to the right top figure, you see the starting point, the median age of, say, economists 30 years ago, and the median age of economists today after 30 years. So you see the starting point, and you see the point of arrival, which is last year, and you see wherever you look, the median age is increasing. We study the whole age structure through pyramids of scientists and scholars within every single discipline. And if you look on the right bottom, you can see the number of scientists, because the expansion or contraction is not only about the graying of a profession. It's not only about age, it's also about numbers. You can see the numbers are increasing in some areas, say biology and genetics, or say engineering, or say medicine. You see the scale of increasing in the number of publishing scientists. And the next line, please, or next slide rather. Well, you can look at the whole 3 decades up, or you can look at the past year, 2020, bottom, and you can see at women and men, and you immediately see where the action is. The action is in the medical sciences. The highest number of females female scientists in the past 3 decades was in medical sciences, biotechnology, engineering, and physics. You see through these pyramids what's going on, where male and female scientists are located. Again, I mean only publishing scientists with 3 years of experience or 3 years of publishing. We excluded all those who were publishing only twice, and we regarded them as accidental scholars. And the next line, please. Or next slide. Yes, you can see the pyramids for all scholars, for women or for men, by academic age. You see where is the concentration of young people or the concentration of very old people, like 36 and more academic age, which is about 66 to 80. Next slide, please. Another example, and I'm finishing. A few questions about highly cited researchers, which only big data can answer. I've been asking these questions somehow with Caroline Wagner, but we never finalized. But the question were as follows: look, how many papers do scientists need to be an HCR, total lifetime output? Does national collaboration suffice to be an HCR or not? Does international collaboration crowd out national collaboration for them? What are their major productivity patterns? What are the collaboration patterns? These are all questions which are impossible to be answered without big data. And with big data, it's possible to answer them and many, many more. I'm telling you here about 10,000 academics. Well, the upper 10,000. Next slide, and we are finishing. Just one example. Okay, HCRs and their lifetime collaborators and differences by discipline. Economists who have in their lifetime only 70 or 90 collaborators, and say chemistry or material science, in which you have hundreds of collaborators. And then team size. How do we work? On the right, we work in very small teams, like in economics, econometrics, 2 people on average. The median is 2 people, and 8 in medicine or biochemistry. You see the differences are not enormous. The median is from 2 to 8. So we talk about large teams, but the medians lifetime for those HCRs are still relatively small. And the last slide. Maybe yes, let's skip this and let's pass on to the last slide, which is a bit of final words. Now, we in higher education research compete with data scientists. We know it, and they are very, very expensive. We have to know it, expensive. They have access to the data, which we don't have, and then they have access to computational power, which normally we don't have. But we have something else. We have theoretical frameworks. Data science does not produce theory. They are focused on practical results. We have theories, and we produce theories. What is needed? We need to know the new opportunities which are already used by others. We need to remember that large-scale research is somehow attractive today, and we can see a number of colleagues and ourselves publishing in Scientometrics or in Journal of Informatics, like say Professor Hugo Horter from Hong Kong, publishing at the same time in higher education or in Scientometrics, like myself. We need to be expansive, and we are expansive. So I believe in complementarity of macro level studies, big studies, and micro level studies with surveys or even with interviews, because it leads to theories. So we have new tools and data, but we know the limitations. Still, opportunities require more attention. Personally, and just one word, personally, I believe I'm slowly, it takes time, 2 years now, slowly moving into the global academic profession area with new data sets and just seeing what happens. I don't know what happens, but I wanted to share with you some reflections on what might happen, because I can see it in other areas: data science, computational social sciences, and quantitative science studies. I can see academic profession study there. I can see academic career study there. Well, and basically, I'm ending them. So I'm trying to test the new data sets and the new approaches. Thank you so much. It's exactly half an hour, as Simon always asked me to be in.
And you are. Thanks, Marek. Terrific presentation, which really opened up the area for people and also gave us something to think about critically. You know, what's our orientation of this kind of work? Where does it fit in the broader scheme of things? How do we compare what we're doing to what others in other disciplines are doing? This is very, very useful. I've got a quick statement and a couple of questions. As usual, our Q&A is coming in slowly and it will come in a rush later on. Glenn Chatelia understands how it works, so he always comes forward very early, but let him be joined by others. But before that happens, I'll ask you my questions and make my statement. Statement is this: I thought your point about shifting from papers or outputs to scholars was very interesting. So it gives you a real handle on the academic profession and does something which other people are not doing. So, and also fits very well with our interests in the academic profession as about faculty, as about people, and about comparing people in different levels of their careers, male and female in different countries and so on. So it sort of makes a lot of sense. But it strikes me also that if we could track changes in people's careers over time, that would be very interesting. If we could start to develop models of an academic career as we can track it in data, and the different rhythms and types of academic career, the broken career issues with child rearing, the late entry professionals, the different kinds of trajectories, and there's interesting, to look at what points people are productive, and what happens when they become professors, what happens to their productivity then. And so change over time, it strikes me as a really useful thing to get a better handle on as we go. That's the statement. My question is, tell us a little bit more about what you actually do. What are the main data sets you're working with? And what change would you like to see in those large data sets? How would you like to see them develop in ways which would facilitate your research?
Yeah. Thank you so much for the comment, the statement, and the question. Yes, in one word, when we move from papers to people, to scholars and scientists, we actually can enter traditional academic profession studies questions, because we have real people with real, maybe not so real, but still academic age, with gender, and with location, affiliation, disciplines. We have life trajectories, I would say, for everyone. I would say that if you publish, you have your life trajectory. We produce those profiles, publishing profiles, but we are also producing collaboration profiles, also affiliation and mobility profiles. We can know a lot about whoever we want. An example was highly cited researchers, but you can think about, well, I would say anyone. I'm just finishing a story about higher education, research and policy community, HERP, which is about 28,000 people globally in the past 3 decades. And I have life trajectories. So this is about the statement. And now the question. The question is about the data and how we do it. Well, I would say it takes time and money and energy and team. So with this laboratory data set, which is all Polish scientists and their publications, it was relatively easy. It took us about 2 years to complete it, get all the consents from the ministries, etc., so that the data set is ready. But I was dreaming about, big data, like Web of Science of Scopus, and thinking about Web of Science. Oh, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars per say a period of 3 years. So you need your team ready. Once you buy it, you need to start working, because the clock is ticking, and it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. You need external support in terms of data storage. You need very fast servers and very fast computers. In ongoing research, Simon, we are not relying on my university computers from computing department. We rely on Elsevier's fast computers, because it costs millions to run what we are doing. Because asking a question is like sometimes 1 day or 2 days of calculations. Easy questions complicated answers. So as far as we are concerned right now, Elsevier is paying for the calculations, for running fast computers, but we are ready to move to our outside servers and pay for it. We are just ready. Now, how we do it? I mean, we discussed it for months, how to tackle, say, a problem of a publishing scientist. Why is it only three years of publishing over lifetime and not 2? Why is it, why we don't count everyone? What to do with people who are publishing in 2-3 countries, or we assume living in 2-3 countries? Yeah? What to do with people who work in several disciplines? We have answer for every question, provisional answer. Let's suppose, is Simon a political scientist or a person from education? We take all Simon's papers lifetime. We take all Simon's references lifetime. And we take the mode. It looks like Simon is something defined in Scopus as education or political scientist or whatever. So we have to answer many questions in the meantime. That's why this is a long research. We spent 1 year, 2 years on those two areas, and we are still not ready. Okay.
Thanks, Marek. I usually get categorized as economics as my second discipline. That's at least
we will check you. We will check you.
According to the Scopus, top 2% scientist list. Anyway, that's where they put me. Now, Christy James from Elsevier has indicated that she's willing to answer any questions people may have. There's a comment from her in the chat, and if you want to direct anything to Elsevier, please feel free to do so.
Hello, Christy.
Let me first, I think, bring in Glenn Chatilia, and after that, it'll be Yusef Oldak. Glenn.
Thank you, Simon. Professor Marek, I really enjoyed your presentation. It opened my eyes and heart to the new type of research, okay, at least from my part of the world. The question that I'm directing to you is this, involving the cross-disciplinary approaches as part of the innovative thrusts in, the new directions of research using big data. And the background to my question is slightly anecdotal. I came across a Chinese student doing a study on marketing and management, but using chatbots as her tool of analysis towards autistic cases bedeviled by that proposition. Now, the question that I have for you is how much of reliance would we have to place on big data, and how would we have to expand teams in such type of research questions, as with the case of my Chinese student? Thank you.
Yes, a fantastic question. Oh, I would say the basic team that we need is people who are capable of thinking in terms of higher education research. So the core is higher education research. Then you need someone from data science who would basically, write the algorithms and send them to Christie or to Elsevier, or work on your in-house Web of Science data set. Well, basically, it's pure data science algorithms, it's mathematics. Then you need the statistician, because people from computing sciences, don't have to know advanced statistics. So you need a statistician, preferably from your National Statistical Office, which is, I'm so happy to have one from National Statistical Office. And then you need someone, probably a computer person, who does visualization in data. In what we are doing higher education research, we produce words and tables. But when we want to convince others, including politicians, we need to be producing visualizations. And you can't do this. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Tableau, and I still can't run it. I mean, it's so bloody complicated. You need someone to do visualizations. So it can be 1-2 people in total, including you, or myself, sometimes 3 people, and it's just enough. And I would say it's interdisciplinary in real terms, in practical terms.
Sorry about the dead air there. Our next question is from Yusef Oldak.
Hello everyone. Marek, thank you very much. Very interesting presentation. I really learned a lot from this. So I wanted to get a concrete example. So you said that we higher education researchers have theories which data scientists lack. So I wanted to ask for a concrete example on this. What was your theoretical or conceptual framework or frameworks in your graying of the academic profession project?
Just, okay, yes, that's a great question. Let me focus on a different area, which is academic productivity or international or generally collaboration. We've been studying productivity for, say, 7 decades, and we've been doing in our area interviews. Yeah, think of Zuckerman and Merton talking to Nobel Prize winners. We're doing interviews. We are doing small-scale surveys, mostly in the US and the UK and Australia. So this is small type of research which produced fantastic theories, sacred, St. Matthew effect or Matthew effect in science, etc., etc. And this is what I call theories. When you look at recent papers, say the past 5 years in Science of Science about academic careers, like for instance, the Science of Science, yeah, you can't find big theories there. You find dozens of fantastic calculations and fantastic visualizations, but not really theories. Theories are Matthew effect from Merton, or aging effects in science. What people in data science read is us from the past 50 years. And this is the approach. So we have the theories, we don't have the data. They have the data and computer power, but I wouldn't say they have big theories. So this is more or less. And if you ask me about the graying, it's basically looking through age pyramids. Is the pyramid showing the getting older of a discipline or getting younger of a discipline over time, by disciplines, by gender, etc. I wouldn't say I'm looking for big theories. I'm not looking for big theories, but I'm testing past theories from my era, which is still higher education research.
Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you both. Bhaskar now. Bhaskar C, are you there, please? Here he comes.
Yeah, good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. So can you hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah, okay. My question is that how can we use the big data in particularly in the subject like humanities, education and social sciences, like when we are doing out research in a school education system or at the higher level also in universities and the colleges, right? So how we can use that big data, particularly for this purpose, for the research purpose?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes. I was very specific in this presentation. The use of big data in academic professional studies. I'm not quite sure. It's widely useful and it's widely applicable, say to education in general or whatever in general. But if you pass from papers to people and scholars, big data are definitely applicable to academic profession studies. I'm not generalizing it to any other area, including education. So I don't have answer or good news for you. I just can't say at the moment.
Interesting. It's very rare that we get interruptions like that on our webinars, but sometimes it happens. So what's next for you, Marek? I mean, what are you working on now? What are you going to bring out next, do you think?
Well, I'm working on several questions. One is, I studied higher education research community through authors in 40 journals in the past 30 years, including top journals like Higher Education, Studies in Education. And I know the numbers. I did an interesting, nice story. Okay. But still, I would like to know where people come to this area. Are they economists by training and by most publications, or are they come from education? So I want to want to do a demographic study, a disciplinary study of us, I would say, the community. They also collaboration study, also, you know, divisions by gender. Are we male dominated as an area or female dominated compared with other areas? So it's a small story, but I would say it's pretty interesting. I'm doing this grain academic profession study, but I'm also working on this men collaborating with women on the global scale. We did it for Poland. We know that males collaborate, male scientists collaborate with men, and women scientists also collaborate with men massively. Women in Poland almost never collaborate with other women, even though there's a large number of women. And we want to do it on the global scale. There are some limitations, but the major data is available. It's gender. 5 years ago, we would never have gender. We would have all those disambiguation issues and all those gender definition issues. Today in Scopus, again, I'm looking at Christy, in Scopus, it's fantastically available for 70% of scholars. So this is another story. And finally, I'm preparing, Simon, I would say big data enhanced survey. I don't have better words. Big data enhanced survey of the academic profession globally. I don't want millions because it's not practicable. Well, but 200,000 people who are leading authors who provided their emails in either Scopus or the Web of Science. It's an interesting sample, and I want to study their demographics, the collaboration patterns, why they are so bloody productive. Is it because of international collaboration, or is it because of having the same team members, or maybe something else? All those questions we are asking in academic professional studies are somehow applicable today through big data. But again, it's just a very small sub area of higher education research, academic profession. I know it's small, but it fits me perfectly.
Yeah, one of the interesting questions for me is, where are early career researchers most productive, in say the first 5 or 10 years, where do you see these hotspots, these sort of bursts of new activity? Is it something you can compare on the basis of cities or countries or disciplines? What happens with early career researchers? We've got a couple of questions coming in now, and Mary Ellen, I haven't given you a warning in the chat, Mary Ellen Sloan, but I'd like to bring you in. Is that possible, do you think?
Sorry.
I think we might have a Mary Ellen with us. Hello, Mary. Hello.
Hello, Mary.
Hi. I didn't expect to connect my audio. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we could got you now. Yeah, I'm sorry about no warning. You came in quite late, and I didn't have anyone on the call list. I've
been lurking. Yeah, I've been following Professor Kwiek on Twitter for quite some time, and very interested in what you're doing. I'm,
thank you.
Kind of early on in my acquisition of bibliometric skills and awareness as an academic librarian in the sciences. So I just have a question, just from my perspective. This is so interesting to look at the global scale and trends that are very deep and broad, but how can I best communicate this to local stakeholders? And I know that might be a question you can ask, but that's my perspective.
Yeah, very briefly, it's fantastic to be working on several planes. One plane is your institution. I'm fully involved in detailed analysis of my institution. Then Poland, which is my country. I didn't mention the story I'm doing right now, are those who start as highly productive, finish their lifetime careers as highly productive. What are the flows between, highly productive and medium productive and low productive? Is there a chance for someone being lowly productive at doctorate, becoming finally a highly productive professor? So this is the national level, and finally the global level. So the answer is, my answer is to be working at several levels at the same time, like institutional, very interesting, national, and finally global. Probably you can't survive with global level only, and you can survive well, also in terms of, you know, publishing or whatever, or interest or whatever, if you focus on your institution only. So it's a combination of levels from micro to micro to meso to macro levels. Globalization is just interesting, very interesting.
Yeah, it certainly is. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Marianne. And our next Q&A participant is Sergio Celis. Sergio. I think you might be muted, Sergio. We haven't heard a word.
Now you can hear me, I guess.
That's good.
All right. Well, thank you for the excellent presentation. Thank you very much. My question is about the same. It's about the holes in these big data sets about academic professors. And I also found very interesting this move of focus from papers to people. But there are highly productive people, professors, I will say most of them, that are not consistent in their productivity looking just through papers. I mean, they might do other stuff, especially those who publish in different languages, in different data sets. And so how we can address this sort of bias or holes in the data set in order to avoid creating a profile of the academic profession that is an ideal type that just work for a very small number of academics?
Yeah, that's a great question. I believe we have to be focusing on our national environment. I'm focusing on Poland, where I have all scientists, 100,000, all Scopus papers, 400,000, but also all papers in Polish from a different data set, which is Polish data set. 50% of publications are in Polish, and 50% of scholars never publish anything in Scopus. So it's possible to work this way on a national level with your national data sets. Obviously, it's impossible to do it on the global level. You have to assume, okay, we take only publishing scholars, those who publish in Scopus, and those who have defined gender. If you think of Far East, it's very difficult. If you think of Poland and Russia, it's 95% gender definition, gender defined people. If you think of Far East, it's, you know, very complicated. So, well, the national, I would say you test your ideas at the national level best, and you apply some of them only at the global level for many reasons. There's biases, language biases, well, publication biases. Why articles? Why not books? Because books are not citable. You don't have citations, so you don't have prestige as you have for journals. You don't have prestige for books. So there's a number of limitations, but in your local environment, like your university or your country, it's much easier and probably more fruitful with policy implications, for instance.
Right. Thank you very much. Yes, I'm making this question from Chile. So we're a small country, but we love to compare to our neighbors and to other countries such as Poland. So that's when it gets complicated, when you have to cross these boundaries, you know. And well, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Sergio. Just can we bring in Christy James from Elsevier for a closing comment, and then I'll wind up with Marek at the very last stage. Christy.
I just wanted to comment briefly on the previous question. So I'm working with many groups of researchers in ICSR Lab, and I'm consistently impressed about the great problem solving that researchers are bringing to these questions about bias or gaps in the data sources, particularly when looking at historical periods where we can be sure that there are records missing. So I've seen such a great diversity of projects, and I really welcome the work that everyone is doing, particularly around the unit of the researcher and a scholar's history. And I'm so happy to see Marek presenting this work today.
Marek, closing comment from you.
Okay, well, I just wanted to stress the word competition. We produce academic profession studies, and others produce academic profession studies, and they produce it for big league of journals, and people read it and comment, and they produce books. We can say, oh, this book, Science of Science, oh, it's not interesting. but it is interesting because it's convincing and it has big data. So my final comment is we in higher education research need to be fully aware of what's going on around us, because in a perspective of a decade, we need to be there with full voice rather than be, young cousins to younger cousins, poor cousins with no funding and no citations and no nothing, talking about academic careers. And big data provide this opportunity, I believe.
I think you've made a really convincing argument, Marek, for both people within higher education studies doing what you're doing, and also developing teams with people who are working in data heavy areas already. It's clearly going to be a major strand of research in relation to science studies, higher education studies, knowledge related areas generally, and extends across to communication related studies as well, and media. Really good to have you on. You really add a significant strand of discussion to higher education studies.
Thank you so much.
You're clearly leading an important area of work, transformative. The fact we had 152 people, I think, at the peak today shows how much interest there is in your work. So
thank you so much, everyone.
You make it visible, you put it out there, and you make yourself very freely available and visible. And it's just really, I think, really paying off for everyone. So thanks for that. And we hope to have you back when you've got a new angle or a new argument you want to bring to us. But the one you brought to us today was really, really, really good. Next webinar, folks, is on Thursday. And James Robson is going to look deeper into the transformations that have occurred as a result of COVID-19 pandemic. And he's going to get in and underneath the rhetoric about the transformative effects in online education, and discern what's really happening there from the claims, from the normative claims. And I think you'll find this will be a very good seminar, which will to some extent draw a line under some of the discussion around COVID-19 in higher education, and enable us to move on from what's been, I think, become a rather foolish debate in some ways. So be really good to have everyone back on Thursday. We've got 150 people to discuss the political economy of digital technology and COVID-19. We'd be very pleased, but Marek, of course, has great drawing power. Thanks to you all for participating, and look forward to seeing you in 2 days' time. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Take care.